Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Whiskey Sour Libations and Conversation. I'm your host, Dominique Lovings. And today we have an amazing special guest, and she is no stranger to our show. I've been trying to get her back for a while now, and she hit me up, and I was like, absolutely, because I wanted you here anyway, just to
Yay.
celebrate, the colors of the wind, Rainbow Month, and all of that stuff. But then you hit me. I was like, okay, well, let's go. Everybody, welcome back to the show, Miss Tiffany Ware. Bow, 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 bow.
Thank you. Bow, 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 bow.
How are you, friend?
I am good. Life is productive. Life is booked. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Blessed. Blessed and booked. That's what I'll say. So, yes.
Listen, we're staying grounded with all this extra outside noise that is coming in, and I am happy to be able to kind of disconnect and unplug from certain things because like life, like you said, life be lifing, but just I have to focus on me. I have to focus on me.
Mhm.
So
It's
I it's
getting it's getting weird and funky out here. That's what I'll say. Weird and funky out here.
and in the midst of that, like my post said, I'm choosing joy. Like I
Yes.
am
Joy
choosing
in life.
yes, because it is so
Mhm.
short.
Mhm.
Iran is talking this and that. And so girl, they done called out the little influencer, disabled boy Shamar. Girl, I don't know what's going on, but what I do know is that
I was like, what? That's not in my feed yet. I haven't even checked my feed for the day yet. I was like, oh,
I
what?
saw that like last night, and I was like, well, how Shamar get in it? And so, girl, then I saw the video. I was like, sir, shut your mouth, be quiet. Just at this point,
Facts.
be
All
quiet.
facts. All
But
facts.
I when one last week was that last week or the week before last, you were doing a live. Um, and you were speaking about it being Pride Month and how you identify and everything, and it relates to what we'll ultimately talk about today.
Mhm.
You were talking about being sexually like liberated, how your partner, your boyfriend is responding to this, and it was such a dope, healthy conversation, and I appreciated that your boyfriend was not, or partner, because we're grown, we have partners, was not judgmental. He was forthcoming with questions and trying to understand your world and how he fit into your world. And I just thought that was so cool because often we find people that are quick to pass judgment, be a little defensive or turned off about things, or if you live your life this way, what does this mean for me? Does this mean that you're going to
Mhm.
do XYZ? And it wasn't like
Mhm.
that at all. So I want to lead with that, which will segue into the text that you sent me.
Right, part two.
I was like, okay, yeah, little girl, let's do it. So let's start with that, like how you're no stranger to the show, and everyone that has listened in the past, uh at that point in time you identified as pansexual. Is that,
Mhm.
are you still pan, or are we, what we doing?
Oh yes, I still identify as pan. I think on the day to day, a word that describes me best is queer.
Okay.
Right? So, and for those who don't know, like the general recap in the community, queer in the dictionary just means weird. Actually, if you like look it up, and so where it used to be a slur, even as early as like the 80s and 90s, like the queer community, not the same but similar to like repurposing the N word for the Black community. Like the queer community has decided like we're going to use that in a positive connotation,
Right.
like different or weird or strange in the positive connotation. And so it's kind of like a word that encompasses, gay, straight, lesbian, bisexual. So yeah, I just feel like although identify pansexual is my best identifier, like queer is the word I choose to usually identify myself. Mhm.
Okay. So now I know that also as your friend going forward. So if we're having conversations, so I am aware to say the
Yeah.
right word. That's I'm always about
Well, first
pronoun.
and foremost, you always know I'm also always a safe space, and usually people aren't trying to do things to upset me. If you get the word wrong, I ain't mad at you.
Okay. Okay.
Ain't nobody
Well,
mad at you. We all learning and living life. Hmm.
so okay. As you enter back into the space of relationship and
Mhm.
partnership, when you were explaining to your guy what's, how you identify sexually, what was his response to that? Because like I said, for my understanding, it was very positive. Or was he like, what does that mean? How do we navigate a dating space? Can you explain that a little bit for us?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say it caught me off guard, but he was just really open about feeling like uneducated, unknowledgeable, right? So
Okay.
he really approached it from a place of like curiosity and seeking understanding, right? So he was like, well, what does that mean? So first I explained like pansexual and queer, and of course, as most heterosexual men will, they'll be like, so does that mean you like girls? Like, have
Of
you had
course.
girlfriends? They go down like the whole gauntlet of like, well, have you done this then? Have you done that? Like, and I indulged to what's appropriate for our relationship in the context at that time. So I'm explaining that. But specifically with pansexual, it usually comes up as our people are like, so wait, you like people regardless of gender? Like, what does that really mean? So I usually just I'm like, yeah, that means I could be in relationship or attracted to a transgender person or a intersex person or all sorts of gender identities. I was like, that's just what I've realized about myself over time. And so he was like, oh, okay. Like, so it just made so many more questions. And then, and also because I've previously been in poly or non monogamous relationships, it made him ask, like, essentially, is he enough? Like,
Hmm.
because I like or can be attracted to multiple genders or multiple kinds of people, like, is monogamy really what I want? And is he enough? Like his real question was like, well, don't you want a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a transgender person, an intersex person? Like basically like, and I was like, I'm not collecting Pokemon cards. Like,
Right.
like I'm not just
I cannot.
collecting different gendered partners. That's
Right.
not what it is. Right. So I was really appreciative because he was like really asking from a place of like seeking understanding and really just addressing his own insecurities. Like basically, am I enough? Right. And I basically explained it to him as this. I was like, are you attracted to other women? And he was like, well, yeah. And I'm like, but, and are you having sex with them or do you want to have a relationship
Correct.
with them? And he was like, well, no. And I said, that's the same with me.
Mhm.
Right. Just because I have the ability to be attracted to those people doesn't mean I need to have them. Right. Or that
Right.
I'm seeking a relationship with them. And it did take a little while. I think he's still processing it if I'm being like fully transparent. But I appreciated the dialogue, right? Because it meant he was seeking understanding and he was giving it a space. He wasn't just like, girl, I can't handle that. He was like,
Right.
okay, I believe you, I think, right? So that is where I'm at. And I think that's where a lot of queer people are at is like, just because we identify a certain way or we like more people than you doesn't automatically mean like we're non monogamous or we're promiscuous or, being monogamous isn't enough.
And I think that's the huge misconception because we all like what we like, but that doesn't mean that we have this big roster of people that we're swapping in and swapping out. Like you have a top five, like, and they all playing at the same time. It's not basketball. It's my life. And how, and even if that was something that you wanted to do, there's also nothing wrong with that.
Mm-mm.
We just tell y'all to be responsible, practice safe sex. So there's
That's
so
right.
many things available to us now. So we just saying practice safe sex. That's all. And do what you gotta do, boo. So it's funny because we talk about that liberation level of sexuality as a whole, no matter how you identify, and it always ruffles people's feather. We see it from conversations surrounding like a Lil Kim, a Foxy Brown, a Meg The Stallion, and the way that people try to police the female body decade after decade after decade because women find themselves being free. And that even goes for like men that identify as queer too, them having that level of liberation as well, and feeling liberated in such a time, especially times like these. So let's get to a little bit of our nitty gritty. So you sent me a message, and and I'm not going to read it verbatim.
Oh, you can if you need to
Oh,
or want
okay,
to, for sure. I
okay,
give that permission, absolutely, because I was like, okay,
okay.
this happened. These conversations are happening. Let's do it.
Let's do it. It says, you said, hey, do you think there's a space on your show to discuss unintentionally becoming a poster child for promiscuity when all meant to be, when all one meant to be was an advocate for sexual freedom and equality? How sexual double standards leave women as hoes and unworthy of marriage if we are deemed to sexually experience. And I was like, wow. I think in some way, shape, or form, it's a lot of women out there, even just speaking up and advocating and not even, being overtly sexual because we're like, hey, this is my body. I can do what I want with my body. And how we get boxed in, or people give us certain labels because, America loves to label a person, they love to box you, they love to do that here. Uh, and why, like you said, double standards, like men for men, and we're gonna say straight men
Yeah.
because it's very particular.
Oh yes, very specific experience. Yeah.
Yes. Where for them it's cool, and for us it's a problem. So, can you give us like a little feedback or a little look into that message that was sent, like a little
Yeah.
background?
Absolutely. So specifically, even in regards to being like a licensed therapist and even like a therapist influencer, right? Like I have a platform of like mental health and like preventing
Mhm.
burnout and treating trauma. But there was a time in my entertainment experience where I was kind of like feeling out my brand. What did I want to do? And I was considering being like, a sex expert or a sex therapist. Through that process, I realized that's not all I wanted to talk about. I didn't want to be boxed into that. I have so
Yeah.
many skills on that. No, not to those sex therapists out there because I love some of them. Some of them are phenomenal. They're great. But I realized also because of my own personal experience and the experiences I can speak from, it really allowed men to put those labels on me.
Mhm.
And they would then deem me unworthy or less than, or try to use that as a way to undermine my actual like professionalism.
Mhm.
Right. So it's like even now I'm combating, I'll go on a show like this or a completely unrelated, like a completely mental health only. Like I could be talking to like the world's top psychiatrist and one of those trolls will come in and be like, don't you know she a hoe? Like that
Yep.
show was 10 years ago. And those experiences I'm talking about are 5 and 10 years old. But they just still try to use that to undermine my professionalism. Like I haven't treated over 3,000 clients. Like
Like,
I'm not a valid person and like people can't change or move on. And even in my relationships, then it's like, a lot of stuff's evergreen, which means once it's on the internet, it's there. Right.
yeah.
So those might have
For
been
sure.
views or experiences from that time, but now partners can still go back and see that. And then
Mhm.
they'll ask, like, well, that's a lot, Tiff. Like, do you still feel that way? Or how am I supposed to live up to that? And I'm like, well, one, yes, let's have that conversation. But two, like, we are allowed to change. And I just think societally, like, women don't have that same grace. Women don't have that grace to be like, oh, that was a period of time where I just wasn't ready to be in a relationship. I was just being casual. I was just enjoying my life and having sex.
Right.
You do that for a year, that year could undermine your professionalism and your life forever. Because men will
Yeah.
be like, well, at one point you had a roster of 15. You said it on that one show that you was mixing up dudes. Yeah. Then,
But also, I think with that, in saying all of that, I think that people, because we live in the day and age, like you said, you have your profession, I have mine, where there's a lot of people that have platforms and spaces where they're not trained, where they don't understand that certain things are for entertainment values, and there are certain things that are said that are exaggerated for entertainment purposes only.
mhm,
And that's one of the things in having you know, conversations surrounding sex,
mhm,
identity, and all this stuff. is having to explain that to people, um, that hey, you saw a character, like, the stage play version of me. This is the real
Mhm.
version of me.
Right.
And this is us having, we say things for clickbait sometimes, for it to go viral. Or are you listening to the full clip? Because you took the hot button from this episode, and then where we go in and we fully break down why this was said,
Mhm.
or how, or you, like I said, we cut it weird where it's like it means something completely different, but it's getting you to engage and to go view the entire post.
Right.
um I think we also live in a space of where we talk about incel behavior a lot, and you can
Mhm.
experience incel behavior for men and women. And we never think of it like that. But a
Right.
lot of the pandering that women do for the gaze of men and for the approval to be accepted by men,
Mhm.
we like to call them pygmies. Uh,
Yes.
but conversations surrounding sex. So like right now, the big hot button topic is something like surrounding the Diddy trial. And so you see so many people in the comments sex shaming. We don't do that over here.
Nope.
Sex shaming, Cassie, where Diddy is deemed as a freak. Oh, he's just a freak.
Right. Wild. Hate that for her.
And Cassie is not, I bet her husband wants to leave her. He's going to take half of her money because of all these things that came out that she did. I said, you don't think that she spoke to her husband about this? And I said, and let's be clear, it's likely her husband that kind of pushed her to sue Diddy, because he wouldn't leave her alone, because he is that much of a narcissistic person where he could not just let her be, could not let her
Right.
exist, ran her out of town.
Right.
So
Made her mama pay them money. They had to take out a second mortgage to pay him money to leave her alone. That's wild.
that's wild. and
Wild.
and so when we talk about that liberation or freedom, and where I hope for Cassie that there is a part of liberation there, because she was able to voice her truth and tell what happened to her. And I'm pretty sure there's so much of a weight of it that's lifted off her shoulder. You have so many people that are saying that she's, like you said, promiscuous. She wanted that to happen the moment he broke up with her. This is why she's doing this. And I'm like,
Mhm.
you're not on the inside of that. You don't know what's happening. And when you are close to stuff, we live in a different city and we know
Mhm.
what is what out here. It's a different game. The rules of engagement are different.
Mhm.
I think that just, I don't know where that stems from. As far as a lot of things are rooted in patriarchal views, white
Mhm.
supremacy,
Mhm.
religion.
Yes.
Because when we talk about the, that sector, a lot of that is heavily rooted in men obsession with virgins.
Yes, but the double standard that they want a virgin hoe, right? And that's what, when I talk to truly like feminist men or men who are just far from misogyny, removed from misogyny, like they get it.
Hmm.
It's a nothing to them. They're like, yeah, like you can't have a virgin who knows everything about her body, knows how to kegel, knows how to get in positions, knows how to immediately submit, knows how to make your fantasies come true. Like that's a completely unrealistic. That is a fantasy. That's not reality. The level of sexuality most men want from a woman is not attainable through anything but experience. So that was one really long relationship. Maybe she only been with one or two dudes, but it was for 5 or 10 years at a time. So they got really, comfortable and explored and stuff. But the level of sexuality and submission most of these men want from women is only attainable through experience, but then it blows their mind when a woman has experience, especially the woman they like has experience, but they have like, yeah, that virgin mentality, like, oh, I don't want no dude to say anything about you to me. Oh, I don't know if I can handle it if some guy makes a comment to me. And to me, it really does reflect the man more than the woman.
Yeah.
It reflects the man. Like, I understand that might test your little ego or your boundaries or how like you want a woman that nobody else has had, but do you?
Yep.
That's the question I always ask men who struggle with this conversation is like, but do you? Because a virgin means, yeah, she ain't had anybody before you, and maybe she could be indoctrinated, because that's a whole nother conversation why you want a woman who's never had anybody before you. But
Hmm.
sexually speaking, from a pleasure standpoint, do you really want a woman who's never had anybody else? Because she's definitely not going to know what she's doing. She's definitely not going to know like how to read your body and listen to what you want and ask you questions and engage your fantasies. Like that doesn't come from being inexperienced.
It does not. But I think, but we have to think about the control aspect of that, because a lot of times it's at this day and age it's so few far in between. I'm not going to say it's rare because we are coming across more women that are virgins at an older age,
Yeah.
but um, there's a level of control that lives there and manipulation, and that's the really the root of a lot of that. And men likes to be in situations that they hold the power.
Mm-hmm.
So when they meet women like us that are experienced, I'm not gonna say we worldly, but we worldly, but where they can't force us to do certain things that we're not comfortable with, or they're not comfortable with, vice versa, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think when you said, oh, like the shock value, I remember dating, talking to a guy, and he was really like a really nice guy. And I guess by that time, he had never met a woman that was just comfortable in her sexuality. And it wasn't like we were doing anything crazy, Tiff. But later down the line, like we had some conversation about it, and he was saying that he had never met anybody, dated anybody that sexually experienced it. I was like, what was we doing? Like, I'm like looking back over it, and he was saying how that was like a little intimidating to him. And I just was like, I didn't feel like I really didn't give you an Oscar worthy performance. Like, it might have been, maybe a BET award or something. I don't know, but I
Nah,
also got
not a
do
BT.
that. Let me not
No,
do
I love
that.
you. I love you for that. That was great. That was great. Right, but you're like that wasn't even like my best, right? You're like that
Yeah,
wasn't even.
we was kicking
Mhm.
it, and I liked you, but I also wasn't trying to do too much at that time.
Mhm.
And so, and to find out that you felt like it was still a lot happening too much, it was shocking to me.
Mhm.
And I just was like, I think as a whole, I think what is that as that shock value for men is like men don't realize, or men are not used to just dealing with women that are just confident as a whole, like outside the bedroom. Like that is how you lead your life. So like I know if I'm hanging out with you, I don't have to worry about, you know, Tiff is gonna be Tiff and I'm gonna be Dom. And it works just together. It's gonna bring, like a certain energy
Mhm.
there. Where some people,
Right.
feel like not that you're shrinking yourself, but you're shrinking yourself so they can feel seen. And I'm not. I hate doing that. Or there's some people I won't hang out with for real
Mhm.
unless it's like, oh, we're just going to dinner or
Right.
something like that, like something like really small because I don't have time for like the jabs or whatever. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like somebody
Right.
back compliment that doesn't feel good to me. So
Right.
I have started phasing those people out. But you get what I'm saying? Like
Mhm.
if I bring her car, I'm gonna bring mine. We finna blow this shit
Right.
up.
Facts. And even what you just said about like, I don't know if that's necessarily happened to me, like the person being intimidated by what was going on. right? But more importantly, like I said, having been in entertainment on and off, like I kind of visit and take hiatus and visit, take hiatus
You do.
from entertainment, depending on like professionally what I'm doing with like different businesses and whatnot. But um, what tends to come back to me is previous content,
Mm-hmm.
right? And like a lot of the times for me, content reflects like a stage of life, right? Like, oh, I'm testing
Yeah.
out that brand, or I'm testing out if I want to do that, or if I'm testing out to do that. And that will come up. Most of my partners are not at all upset with what they experience in the bedroom. No.
Yeah.
Everybody's very happy with the experience as it applies in real life. Where it becomes often conversation or sometimes problematic is, oh, but now you talked about it somewhere. Not us one on one. Like I'm almost never talking about my current sexual relationship. Most people don't even know when I'm in a relationship, but they'll be like, but you used to, right? Like now it's out there. People know you've done X, Y, Z, or people know you have this experience, or and I'm like, and like I don't really have a good response outside of, but who am I right now? How am I showing up for you right
Right.
now? Right? Like, people be like, but you used to be non-monogamous. I was like, yeah, that was for that relationship at that time. Well, is that what
Yeah.
you want now? No. Thank you for asking.
Yeah. I'm like, let's get down to the root of this. After we peel these, like, we don't have to do all of this. What is the problem? And I
What
think,
is the
like,
problem?
a lot of the stuff that we see now, like, even, whether it be you, me, whomever else, I think, I don't think that people, I'll say some people, are not worried about being labeled like promiscuous, whatever, or she's promiscuous, whatever. It's more so the thing of, okay, are we gonna get down like this? Are we gonna do this? Or like that's the thing. It's like it's so if they not sure where you are, in your life, it's like, oh
Mm-hmm.
dang, I missed that window. So why aren't you
Mm-hmm.
this? Or why aren't you or they want a partner that is more liberated, but then they want them to be liberated behind closed doors for them. But like we talk about men and sexuality all the time, and a lot of times like men think that they are these, we say as we say freaky human beings. Because Diddy, that's you're when you think about, he's very sexually free,
Yes.
and nobody wants to have that conversation. And he's still a monster because it takes nothing to be a decent human being. And we're not going to unpack that here, but he's a prime example of sexually free, but it's at a cost, at the expense of other people that have been harmed and, on the way to his freedom, right? But a lot of
Because
people,
in his case, there was a lot, and this is what people are missing. One, I'm really not seeing people call him gay still. No one's calling him slurs. No one's questioning his sexuality. Let's be
no,
very clear. Diddy is clearly not heterosexual.
he is not.
The
But,
stuff that he's driving is not heterosexual. Period. Whatever label you deem being on there is definitely not heterosexual.
it's not.
And and some of the things he did are just fall under fet life, which is something I coach on and educate on. But why Diddy is such a problem is he was predatory in nature and
Mm-hmm.
manipulated consent,
Mm-hmm.
coercion. And this is the place
Yep.
where so many women get uncomfortable, we get abused, and it happens to men too, but exponentially more to women in
Mm-hmm.
regards to coercion. He used power and money to silently get people to do wild things far beyond their personal boundaries.
Yep. Yep. Speak
So,
on it, sis.
but this is why, like, people might be upset with the outcome of this trial because his attorneys are going to manipulate that. They're going to manipulate
Absolutely.
what is consent, what is coercion, but he didn't really say it. But, like, you don't need to say it, right? A
Mm-hmm.
lot of women consent to sex because we're just afraid to say no. Men's rejection could put you in a problematic situation. So a lot of women will lay down and put up just to leave in one piece. You know what I mean?
And that,
So
and we call that, guys, survival. We
facts.
call that is what that is. And, you know, when we talk about things like that, like you said, all the names that they have called the women that are affiliated, associated with this case, they've been called every name in the book. And like you said, we haven't called him gay, queer, whatever, however. And but like I said, we live in a different world. We've been knowing this. It just wasn't. It was public, but it wasn't public because we were very well aware of what he was doing at these parties and with different people in the industry. And I but it goes back to allowing men to set the precedent for how we are supposed to operate in society. And we see it time and time again where you'll have a guy that might come onto the scene, and then he has a wife that would, I guess, by day-to-day standards would be called regular. She's a little more frumpy, not as attractive by society standards that he put through the ringer. And then when he is popping and his pockets are right, he dumps her and gets the younger girl, the hotter chick that is their toy, their trophy wife. And it's like, no, it's no like harm or foul done from society stand, like when the conversations happen. And I just wonder where there's a turn of events, because I think about it from a historical standpoint, how powerful women have been throughout the course of like the ancient days. Like, is that the history,
Yes.
historically? And now you see it shift where men have taken the reins and have just jacked shit up.
Yes,
And
I
it's
actually, and
time and time again.
I was literally just reading. There was I think she was a nurse practitioner or doctor on social media, and she was directing us to a new study that proves that, like, even how we understand sperm and fertilization isn't what you think. It's not like, oh, the sperm are just chasing and like the magical strong sperm fertilizes the egg. That's actually not really what's happening. Like, yeah, are they swimming and they got to get up there? But the new study shows that, like, essentially the egg um, secretes a hormone to attract the sperm to her, the strongest sperm. It's a pheromone that is meant to attract the strongest sperm. And even then, when they get there, she picks, the egg rejects the other sperm, identifies the strongest one, and accepts it into the cell, and then decapitates all the other cells. Almost like that scene in the Matrix where like Neo just shuts down all the sentinels. That's what's
Hmm.
happening. And so even biological, on a biological sense, yeah, your sperm have to be like strong and swim in there, yes. But at the end of the day, even the female biological code is deciding who she accepts. Like, we're choosing it. And I was
Or
like, that does change the understanding biologically. Men really want to think like we impregnate you and like, we're choosing you. And I'm like, before Christian biblical times, like women were actually very strong and like revered as mothers and creators and bringers of life. So I don't know. Historically, there's some tracking of like where that happened and why, but how it manifests for me in the day to day is that, like I said, like that comment that I wrote you, as someone who talks about sex so openly and uses some of my
yes,
life experience as a sounding board, what ends up happening is people assume that because maybe I was in a more liberated time or more promiscuous, that means that's who I am today. But more importantly, is that like a lot of men are afraid for somebody else to call their woman a hoe. It don't even come down to me caring. I don't care what you call me. I know who I am and what I'm operating in. I know I'm monogamous now. I know what I want for my future. I know I'm about to build a legacy, yada yada. But at the end of the day, the person who chooses to be in partnership with me has to be strong enough in ego and self confidence to not care if someone calls me a hoe.
yeah. And I was gonna say something really interesting too, to piggyback off of the fertilization, or when they talk about miscarriages and how they've been more forthcoming with information and saying, "Hey, girl, 9 out of 10 times, it's not you; it's really the man
Yes.
and their sperm that causes that tragedy to happen."
Yes.
And no,
That like you accepted, a sperm that doesn't have like actually healthy DNA or incompatible DNA, and that's what's causing it. And like you said, I think the statistics like closer to like 70 to 80% of miscarriages are actually like male DNA caused.
Yep. And
Even though it's happening in our body, it's their fault.
yeah. But that's it's you know, I just uh, it's so it's so funny because I was having a conversation with the guy was saying, and he said sometimes I feel like you are anti-male, and I said no, I'm not anti-male, I'm just pro-female, and just pro honestly like accountability. I'm a woman, and so there are certain things I think where women can speak from direct experience how something has directly impacted us, and we're telling you here's exhibit A, B, and C. These are factual. This is factual evidence, and then I'm just supposed to disregard that because of what you're saying because you're a man, and I don't believe in that.
Right. And not even being anti men, because everybody knows I am like the black man champion. Like I've been through some things, but
Okay.
I will not give up. I will not give up on black men. I love me some black men. So I will never give up on the kings that are out there. But I believe in a certain kind of black man.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
I am pro men who are pro women.
Yeah, and
There's a
there
lot of men out here who don't really like women like that. They like to have sex with us, but they not for us.
well, I would like to read you a fun quote that I saved. Uh, because you know, since we're there, I'll be saving all the little quotes. I'll be like, oh, you right, you right, you right. And hold on, where is it? Where is it? It's a couple of them here.
Okay,
One
I
is
like
men don't joke. They test your boundaries and see how you can handle the joke and decide if they're joking based on your reaction.
it. Hmm.
And then the other one was so much of the male loneliness epidemic boils down to the fact that a lot of men just don't like women. They don't enjoy being around them. They just want to have a girlfriend in the abstract, but their lives otherwise are entirely homosocial. When you say that to people, they get so mad, but that's really the reality of the situation. Because
It
just
is.
like we talked about at the pool, and I told you, and I was like, yo, if I didn't know better, XYZ.
Yes, and it is a conundrum that heterosexual men will not address. It makes them so uncomfortable. Usually, if you bring it up, they will counter accuse, deflect, distract. They're going to do something to call this attention away from a lot of things that heterosexual men do are homoerotic. And they love to spend time around each other, which is healthy, but where's the balance? Right? Like I spend time with men who like a female presence,
Yeah.
right? You know you can find calm and peace and just be it your head laying in my lap,
Yep.
right? Like you like to talk to me while I cook you breakfast. It's not just about coming out the bedroom when the plate's ready. Like, oh, I want to dialogue with you. I want to actually have dialogue with you. I want to know how you're feeling, what you think about what I'm doing. Like I like men who like to be present with me. That doesn't mean you can't go with your boys because I'm gonna go out with my girls. But there's so many men where all they want to do is game with their boys, go play basketball with their boys, go have happy hour with their boys. Everything is like my boys, my boys, my boys. My boys. So where's there room for your woman and
Yeah.
female energy when everything you do is centered around other men? And then when you call that out, like how is that not non-heterosexual? They'd be like, well, what? No, like pause. I'm just making an observation.
Yeah.
Do
No.
you even appreciate the female presence? And most people ain't ready to answer those questions. So I'm excited to see these comment sections because I'm curious. I need to know. And I'm a mental health professional. For most of the part, that does not mean I'm a mind reader. Please, people, no, I do not be reading minds. No. But I observe behavior. And I'm really good at observing behavior and changing behavior. But let me tell you, this observation about the whole like you be doing a whole lot of butt slapping and grabbing and weird stuff in the showers and all this weird stuff, initiating like a lot of homoerotic initiation when it comes to like male
That's what I
sports.
was gonna say. A lot of homoerotic
You be
girl.
shoving stuff in places and slapping things and pulling and grabbing things, but that's all that's all heterosexual just because we play sports. And then we'll
But like
never
we
get
talk about, but see, but which leads me to this. Like when we talk about men and their oh, I get down, I do this. I'm like, a lot of y'all freakiness, as y'all say, ends at a threesome, and that's not an bringing in an extra male. That is two women. Y'all don't, and even have a threesome. If you having two men, it doesn't. No one's telling you to interact with that man. Like
right.
you don't have to do that. Like that's no one said that you went there. But also, y'all think that, oh, it's hanging out with women. Well, oh, I think that's how I always start. Like, y'all be kikiing it up, and the next thing you know, somebody eating each other out. It's just like, what? Like, who does that?
Yeah,
Is
they just
that
having
what
these
you do?
weird ideas of girl, like every, like not every, but a lot of men have this idea that we're just having underwear parties.
Yeah. And we not.
Nah, if
We
anything,
literally,
we're in moo
we literally be
dripping
sitting there, like, waiting to exhale, like, eating,
literally.
drinking, we are worshiping with each other for real. Like that's because we need that from each other, but we also know we need that in order to survive this life and how important that fellowship is. And like we talk
Yeah,
about the loneliness uh epidemic that they have, y'all not being real and y'all don't want to talk about real shit with each other, which is why black men in particular have such a high rate of suicide. That's not a
yeah,
flex. That's not okay.
not okay because they're so isolated. They're not talking, and when they are talking, like, are you talking about the right stuff? Right?
Exactly.
But also, that's why I do think it translates to relationships with black men. Is either what happens is it tends to be so like drastic, like because they don't know how to have healthy intimate relationships, the romantic relationship then also becomes surface deep because they've never had an opportunity to practice. Right? I have a TED talk, I teach about practicing vulnerability. You have to practice that as a skill. It can be a strong strength, right? But like you have to practice that, whereas black men don't have as much practice with that, so then they go into a relationship not having that skill at all. Or the extreme opposite, they know they need it, so now they're overly dependent on that woman to the point that it can become abusive. That's the only person they've ever been intimate with. That's the only person they've been vulnerable with. So now it's like, you're mine. Like, don't
Yep.
you dare ever even speak a word to somebody else. Don't you repeat anything. Don't you share your good vulnerability with anybody else, because you're the only person they've ever had that with. And so then becomes like pretty polarized. Where it's like, if we were able to teach the value of vulnerability, how do we do that? Discernment, who do we be vulnerable with? Relationships would be so much better, especially in the black community. If we just taught that. Like, how do we have healthy vulnerability? So we don't have to be alone.
And but being alone, having to sit with those thoughts and that reality, a lot of people don't want to do that and acknowledge that
No.
because that still requires a level of work.
So much work. And risk. There is risk in practicing vulnerability because you can get burned.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so many people are like, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words never hurt me. Wrong. I unteach that every day. Words are some of the most dangerous things. A
Yep.
scar, you can get an injury, the bone will heal, the scar will be there, cute, the skin will heal over. Those words will ruminate in your mind for decades,
Yep.
pull you
Absolutely.
apart
Listen,
psychologically.
I just started wearing brown, and my mama told me in the eighth grade I look like a tootsie roll, and she said, but that's what I
Not you and your Tina Turner leg have a mama. Look at you two, and they had the nerve to plant the seed in you. That's something that don't look good. Oh Lord.
girl, it's looking like a tootsie roll. But that's what I said. I'm like, I'm 38 years old, and I'm just now really buying brown. That is, I was in the eighth grade when that happened. I was like, I
Right,
gotta
because
look.
that stuck with you right here, seared into your mind. Like,
He
ooh,
said,
I
"Oh,
want
you
to look
should
like a
buy
Tootsie
brown. Brown
Roll.
is not your color." I was like, it's really not my color. Y'all telling me it is, but it's not. But I think all in all, it's a people project a lot, and a lot of this is just pure projection and wanting to be accepted as well. So I'm gonna cater to and pander to XYZ so people can see me and see
Mhm.
that I'm important
Mhm.
outside of my house or whatever in my like because I want to dim and break somebody else down to the minimum in doing that because they feel like there's a level of power there.
Yes. And it's unfortunate that like the female labeling has been so powerful for so long. Just even like the slut, promiscuous, whole, like that title has been so effective, unfortunately, in undermining women.
Yeah.
It's so problematic. It's so unfortunate, and that there's a large group of men who are worried about that. You know, and I'm like, I mean, are you willing to lose a really good partner because you're afraid someone might call her a hoe?
But I think honestly, for some men, they can act like they care, but they really don't. They don't at the end of the day. But it's just something for them to control. And I think that you get so many because, like we talk about, a lot of the top like well, I'm gonna say at least for clickbaity top podcasts, it's just like I said, it's the red pill guy, the incel behavior. But I think that women, what we have to do and there's a lot of us that do a job because it's just when I think about it as a whole, it's probably such a small percentage, but it's the algorithm that's working against what we
Yeah,
really want to see.
exactly.
Uh, is just honing in on that power because women are
Very.
powerful in so many different ways. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and basic survival, honestly,
Mm-hmm.
they say that it relies like it lies on me. No, it don't. It's women because there's certain stuff that I've experienced in the last year or two, as you know. I'm like, how are you even alive?
How have you really made it this far? Like, I'm so flabbergasted sometimes. Like, what?
Girl.
So, yes.
And that's really what it is. But I know we have to wrap up here. We're gonna have to have a part two of this because we
Yes.
have
And I love being here and I'm happy to share time with anybody. You know, I like a good intellectual spar. I love to rack brains and have conversations. And like I said, I'm very curious to see these comments because I feel like just because you're talking about sex or had some sex doesn't mean you a full fledged, you know, current promiscuous person. Like, oh, I'm like that. What I was talking about was 5 or 10 years ago.
but why does it even have to involve the word promiscuous? You just was exploring your sexuality and finding out what you like and what you don't like. You were a Tiff the Explorer to me.
Right. Or just casual dating. That's
Yeah.
my confusion. Can we all like so men it's casual dating, women it's promiscuous? Because to me, casual dating is that synonymous or not with promiscuity? Now I'm confused, even as a professional. So
Hmm.
I tell everything that the most kind thing you can do is speak clearly. And let's clarify our vocab. Does that word mean the same thing to you as it does to me? Because now I'm confused.
Well, Tiff, thank you so much for coming back. Can you tell the
Thank
people where they
you.
can find you and possibly retain your services?
Yes, I will say I am highly sought after. My private practice is pretty
Okay, so
full.
then never mind. We don't
No,
want to
but
overwhelm
on
you.
occasion, yes. At any given time, I'm accepting like one or two new clients. So you can find like my therapeutic services at geminiwellness.org, just the way it sounds. And then all social media platforms at Tiff Talk TV.
Well, thank you so much, Tiff, for coming back and blessing us with your beautiful presence. Y'all, we will see y'all back here next week.